Okay. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the data platform Women in Tech show UnitedWeTech. In this episode, we are going to be interviewing Heini. We will be talking with her on how she got into tech, what she's doing, the cool stuff she's doing with Azure, and some women in tech issues, as we usually do. So before we get started, my name is Mala and I co-run this group with my colleague Leslie. This episode, we have a sponsor. We haven't had a sponsor for the past episodes, but for this episode onwards, we have a sponsor, and our amazing sponsor is somebody I used to work with and is currently running his own consulting. His name is Joe Fleming, and he can be reached at SQL Taylor Consulting. He's a brand new consulting shop. He's one of the best DBAs I've worked with. And if you're watching this and if you have any needs for remote DBA work or any kind of consulting around high availability and cloud hosting and things like that, then please do consider him. Thank you, Joe, for sponsoring us. Okay. So let's get started. Leslie, can you introduce yourself? And then
Sure. My name is Leslie Andrews. Mala and I co-lead the Data Platform Women in Technology group. We would love for you to go out to our website, www.dataplatformwit.com, and sign up for our newsletter. We have a meetup group you can join that will send out notifications about our United in Tech podcasts. And we're excited to have Heini Ilmarinen. Is that how you say it? Okay,
yeah,
good.
Very good. Excellent.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yes. So I am Heini Ilmarinen and I live in Finland. And I work as a DevOps consultant for a company called Polar Squad here in Finland. So that means our company focuses solely on DevOps things. So setting up infrastructure easier, making deployments easier and so forth. And so kind of my area then overlaps the data platform things and this DevOps world in quite a bit. So I work a lot with customers on Azure, on their data platform projects on there, and how to get the DevOps side into the data side of things as well. So data ops kind of things, if you want to put it that way.
I'm really excited. I'm doing a DevOps training on Monday and Tuesday.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, when you're working with pipelines or any of the, I mean, it all works with DevOps, and you really want it to flow through your systems and your processes. And so I'm excited to learn more about that. So
yeah, wonderful.
Yes. And you also do the Knee Deep in Tech podcast, right? Don't you have your own podcast? Yes. How exciting is that?
That is really fun. So I joined Alexander and Simon, who are the other two hosts in the show.
I've listened to one or two. I think the last one I saw, you were talking about the conference thing, Catherine's blog post and what came out of that, right? I did listen to that. Yeah, it was a pretty good interview. Yeah.
And we get to talk about all kinds of fun tech things as well as things that concern the community. And we want to also talk about any topics that might be a little more difficult, topics that we don't normally talk about. And we think that it's important to bring those to the front. And as well, we then have discussions around tech things and have interviews with people and so forth. And it's been really fun because I joined it so that Alexander and Simon had been doing it for quite a while already. Okay. So they are both very professionals. So I got to just join, and then they were like, okay, you need this for your audio and you need this for mixing. And, I'm not particularly interested in those details myself.
Yeah, me too.
So
it's kind of nice to have you get started in an easy way that one doesn't have
somebody
to go
that already
digging.
knows all of the here are the good things that you need to have so that this will work
exactly.
well.
Exactly.
Somebody else's experiences.
Yeah.
Fun. So how long have you been doing the podcast with them?
I started last fall. I can't remember exactly, but after the summer.
So less than a year or so?
Yeah, less than a year. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in tech?
It's the years pass so quickly that it's a difficult question. I graduated in 2016 as a math teacher, and I started to become a math teacher and did some math teaching on the side while I was studying. And I kind of ended up in the end of my studies thinking that, well, this might not be what I want to currently do for my life. And I would like to do something a little different, challenging in a different way, because, you know, there are challenges in teaching, but they relate to like, you want to help the young people grow and so forth. But the math in itself isn't that complex, and it doesn't really change over the years or anything like that. So I really wanted to get into something where I could use my problem solving skills and, you know, even maybe leverage my teaching skills a bit. And so I actually decided to do my master's thesis on cryptography. So I looked at the mathematical side of elliptic curve cryptography specifically. And after that, I thought that maybe I could give a shot at trying to get like a security junior position or something like that. Because
you have a thesis and all that in your master's. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Out here, we only do thesis for PhD kind of programs. Yeah. So I was like, did I miss something? Are you really a PhD or a master's?
No, master's. In Finland, we need to do a thesis for our master's when we graduate.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And it is. Yeah, it was a long process, but I managed to get it together. Yeah. And in the math side, it's kind of different. You don't necessarily do any research, but it's bringing the theory together and kind of more an informative package than like doing research or anything like that.
Got you.
Yeah.
We have projects in our masters, like a real life project we have to go into. Like I'm doing my masters now after 30 years. It's been
awesome.
Interesting. So we have to work a real project in the last year. We have to work with a real company and present what that is for evaluation. So it's not a thesis, but it's more of a project. Interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, there are so many different ways that the school systems work in different countries.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so,
Molly, you should move your camera down a little bit so we can see your face some more.
Oh,
that's much better.
Perfect.
Yeah. Awesome. So you, one of the things that I love about your presentations are your demo, your deck, your slide deck.
Yeah.
You have the coolest slide decks. I'm always like, oh, I have like words. Mal, I don't know if you've ever seen one of Heini's presentations.
No, I haven't. I haven't been to her presentations. So what do you typically present on?
So my topics range around the Azure data services, but I often have a twist to it, like looking at the networking side or access control or an overview architecture of a specific service and how you put it together for your scenario. In general, something like that, or DevOps things for data. Actually, that's also one of my favorite topics. And I actually
the slide decks that are really cool. It doesn't matter what she's talking about. They're like a blackboard, and she writes on them and draws pictures and doodles.
So say more to us about DevOps for data people. Many people I know, myself, they have all kinds of different ideas about it when you think about it. And I keep bugging Alex. Alex is my go-to guy for DevOps. So tell us more about what you think DevOps for data actually means, or how should DBAs and database developers understand it?
Yeah, for me on the data side of things, there's kind of two layers. We have kind of the infrastructure layer that we can do in a DevOps way. And that is actually very similar to what you would have in the application world. So that would be like putting up your Azure SQL databases or whatever services you want to use from Azure, and any networking and access control, etc. And that is very similar to how we would work with an application project and do it in a DevOps way. But the one thing that, of course, maybe isn't so ingrained in the infrastructure DevOps side yet is that we then want to use some kind of method that we can have in source control. So we, for example, want to use infrastructure as code. So Bicep or Terraform or something like that to define our resources. And that really allows us to have that version control in place. So if something goes wrong, we can roll back to the previous version. We kind of have our config in those configuration files. We don't have to go poking in the portal to check how did we configure this. We just have these files that we can use. And of course, to make the changes automatic, we need some pipelines in place as well. And I think the one thing people sometimes forget that most people haven't been working this way for a long time. So it is also kind of a process change. You have to start doing things differently. And even when I started moving more towards doing things the DevOps way, you often get into this point that you need to do something really fast. And you're like, well, if I could just go into the portal and click around, I could do it so much faster. But you kind of have to have a little bit of discipline. And it doesn't actually take that much longer to do it through the files and adjusting your configuration. But it's just kind of a mental block in the beginning that, oh, I would just want to go there and click around a bit.
Just let me go and do it. Why do I have to do all these things first?
Yeah, exactly.
So how does a typical team that does database DevOps, I'm not saying correctly, but efficiently, how does it look like? Would you have people with different skills, or would everybody need to do a little bit? One of the things about Agile that I struggle with is that nobody can be a specialist in anything. Like everybody has to know everything. And in the real world, that's just so hard, especially with so many technologies out there. Not everybody can know everything. Like, even if a developer claims to be a full stack kind of a person, what he knows about data would be considerably less than somebody who specializes in data. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
But I think the difference is the mindset of doing a thing so that it's repeatable. And it's not that the database developer has to know the whole DevOps process. The database developer just needs to know that when I've made this change, I check it in, I write a comment, I assign it to the work ID of the task in the agile system, and I push OK, and then the process kicks off and my change will get deployed in all of the places it needs to go. So it's not like one person needs to know one person does need to know the whole DevOps thing, but that's their job. All of the developer people, they don't need to know the whole DevOps thing. They just need to know the steps that they need to do in the process so that their piece and their change gets to where it needs to go.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. Like, there's going to be some people who specialize more on the DevOps side of things, like building the pipelines and helping automate all those steps. And then there's the people who are actually making the changes. And like I said, there's kind of two layers. When we're working with data, we have the infrastructure layer, but then we of course have the data layer as well. And ideally we would have that kind of in a similar process. But there we might, depending on what things we are doing, we might focus a little more on the data quality than like, is the code perfect? Compared to like application development, where you would focus more on how the code is built. But on the data side, we have to really focus, like, is the data that we get with this change, is it accurate? And is it the data that we need? So the focus shifts a little bit. We always need to ensure that the data is actually valid.
One of my favorite analogies for cleaning data is we've gotten so used to doing things like walking up to a faucet and sticking our hand out and pure clean water just comes flowing out and it's just magic. And people think that's the way data work, is you just, you open the report and all of the fresh, clean data just comes flowing in and it just works. And nobody really thinks about all of the infrastructure that's required and the work to get the nice, fresh, clean data to come pumping out. There's a lot of stuff in the sewers going on down there, right?
Exactly.
Where, it's not always clean and pretty coming out. You got to like do stuff to it. And people, people really need that mindset change sometimes to think about, you think the data's clean, but it's not. It never is, ever.
No, exactly. there's always things to improve. And, with bringing DevOps things to the data side, what we're able to kind of get more than what we've been able to do previously, especially when we combine it with the cloud, is that we actually would have like separate environments for testing and verifying the data and the actual production, so that we can first take those changes in there, and then after we verify that it actually works, then we can take it to production. But yeah, then we get into a whole can of worms, like how do we get valid test data, and yeah.
Right, especially with so much emphasis on security and P2 stuff. And ideally, your testing works great when you have data as close to production as you can possibly have in the test environment. But without that, like I'm currently even working on a project at work where they're used to having production data for testing. Now they want us to wipe the lower environment. So how, I can totally expect there's going to be more bugs going out.
Yes, definitely.
Right. So creating test data is a whole skill in of itself.
Yeah. It's a whole topic in itself.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people need to understand is there is so much opportunity in the data platform. It's not just database work. There's all sorts of other stuff that you can do, and we need analysts for, and just those critical thinking skills of how to look at problems and come up with solutions. And I think that there's just so much opportunity. And
exactly.
Yeah. So I see helmets behind you. Are you a climber? Are those climber helmets?
No, those are bike helmets.
Bike helmets. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I ride bikes a bit. I have a mountain bike, well, actually two, and I like to go outdoors when I have some free time and just play around in the woods. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing, but biking is one of my favorite things to do.
Nice. I climb. That's why I thought they were climbing helmets.
Cool.
I have a bike too, but we climb more than I bike. So
cool.
Mostly indoor at the gym. We don't go. It's hard to go climbing outside. You have to get a place. And,
a lot of effort.
Yes. Yes, it is. So cool. What type of stuff do you do? Like, is your favorite part of your work? What kind of problems do you like to solve the most?
Well, I really love architecture problems.
What kind of problems?
Architecture problems.
Oh, architecture problems.
So and what I mean by that is like figuring out like which services to choose and how do we make them fit together, and especially taking into consideration security, which is, I think, kind of has been coming more and more into focus in the cloud environments as well.
Yeah.
So I really just like to figure out like how do we make this work, and there's often requirements for we need to connect to this from our on-premise site or something like that. And so there's often many pieces that fit together, from like DNS and networking and access control, and then we eventually get to the database layer of things, like what do we actually then do with the data. So yeah, my favorite thing, well, one of my favorite things to do is to solve puzzles. So sometimes I describe that what I do is I solve puzzles all day. So that's how it feels to me.
What kind of puzzles?
Just
puzzles or...
I mean, like jigsaw puzzles.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I like jigsaw puzzles. I like logic puzzles.
Yeah.
I do Wordle every day
as you get older.
Yeah.
There's
what are some of the challenges you've seen onboarding people to a cloud environment, especially those who've been on-prem for a really long time? I think those challenges are going down.
Yeah.
But they're still around. So I wanted to understand what you've seen in that regard.
Yeah, I feel like even in the past like 2, 3, 4 years, it has really decreased. Like when I started, I remember there was much more, just doubting cloud environments and being unsure of how they work.
Is my stuff going to be safe? What happens if the cloud goes away?
Yeah. But specifically on the database side of things, I think what is still a bit of challenge is trying to figure out and find the appropriate performance, especially if you're moving something existing from on-premises. Then figuring out and having the appropriate performance in the cloud is sometimes still a challenge. And, there are so many models, even for a SQL database in Azure, you have so many modes that you can run it. So often people start with just picking the default one, which, for example, for Azure SQL is the DTU model. No, I don't think it's anymore the default, but it used to be the default. So people would start with that, and then they're like, why is my thing not performing well? And so it's quite a process to find still the appropriate performance level and realize what the limitations of different levels are and how to figure out the best platform for what you're trying to do.
Just deployed to the cloud. It's a migration from an IBM DB2 to an Azure Synapse. It's serverless SQL. But the performance, right? So we've been doing all of this stuff and we run the reports. Well, Monday was like the first day, like the users used it. And our work groups and our resource classes and all of the buckets that people in the report user versus the regular user and who have priority and getting all of the, the resources available to that group of, so that the reports run fast, all that troubleshooting all week long has just been really stressful.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's working much better now. The reports are finishing much quicker. Yes, we resolved most of those issues. But yeah, it's been a long week.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that's the thing. There are quite many concepts that one has to grasp when going to the cloud. And like on premises, the services are somehow, they're not simpler actually, but the concepts are just different. And you have to kind of think of different things. At least we don't have to actually figure out like setting up like clusters or anything like that anymore.
Yes.
Thank goodness.
It just does that all by itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome that it does all of it by itself.
Yeah. But it's still like, for example, in Azure Synapse Analytics, there's so many components to it. Just figuring like what you do with each part and what you would be using each of those components for. Just that and wrapping your head around that. It's quite a lot of information already. So and then configuring it.
Yes. So I'm mentoring a woman at work. She's not that much younger than I am, but she just transitioned into tech. And so she's new in tech. And she's been doing some working sessions on Data Factory and Synapse. And she's like, how is Synapse pipelines? How does that fit into Data Factory? I'm like, oh no, they take Data Factory and they plugged it into Synapse. It's the same thing, but it's just one piece. But getting, like you said, all of the different pieces of Synapse and understanding where they fit in the process and going, oh, well, Synapse pipelines, that's just Data Factory that they just plugged in right there. Boom.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you know Data Factory, well, then you know Synapse pipelines. So the skills are so transferable, and you know how to create an Azure resource, you know how to create doesn't matter what kind of Azure resource it is. If you know how to do one, you know how to do them all because you do it the same way. They've made a really good UI that's consistent across all of their products. And once you learn how to do some of these things, it's just, oh, well, you go here and you set this up and you're done. So
that's good. I don't work very much with the cloud. We are still a heavily on-prem environment where I am, and it's too big, really big to be re-architected for the cloud. Unless they put in money and put dedicated people on it, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So there are a few environments like that. It's just too expensive and too big, and you just can't move into the cloud. Decide that hardware is too expensive. You have to architect it the right way. Otherwise, you're going to be paying a lot of money and not gaining any benefits for that. So that is a big challenge. Yeah.
I will say that's one of the challenges of Azure is, well, how much is it going to cost? Oh, well,
Let's go to the
depends.
calculator and toss numbers around and try to put something together.
And
So if
even
somebody
then,
has trying to make a choice between Azure and AWS or any other, hosting provider, how do you, are there any advantages about Azure that literally stand out that they should go for it? Because that's another challenge that I've seen in a lot of places, is because Amazon is cheaper sometimes and they want that. It's the first choice that comes to their mind.
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on what area you're doing. The one benefit that is definitely on the Azure side is that it's so integrated with Azure AD. So you have your user identities available, and it's easier to control which resources they can see and which they can't, and so forth. So I think that is definitely, like, on the overall level, that is easier to manage on the Azure side than in the AWS or GCP side, because there's that particular service that is meant for the identity management.
Right.
But then there is such similar services between the different clouds. Like, you can almost always, like, say, for example, in Azure, we have blob storage, and in AWS, we have S3 and so forth. You can find these parallels in many places. But there is, of course, differences in the features between the clouds. So you would have to, like, if you really wanted to go in and check, like, which is the best, you would have to look at the specific services that you're planning to use. And the tricky part there is that in a half a year, the situation might have tilted the other way around. So it's really hard to assess that, in my opinion. On the data side, of course, that's what I'm most familiar with as well. And also that is also what I'm most familiar with on Azure particularly. So I might have a little bit of tendency to lean towards Azure. But on the data side of things, Azure has been taking leaps and bounds to make it more cohesive and easier to manage. Whereas at least previously on the AWS side, it has been more, it's not all services integrate together, but you have to kind of carefully check, like, do these work together and so forth. So on the Azure side, that has been making a lot of progress. I have to say, I cannot say about the current situation of AWS as exactly as with Azure, because I don't work with it as much. So,
well, and that's the thing too with the cloud environments, I mean, you go to do a demo and the whole thing's changed. You're like, oh, I guess we're going to figure this out together on the fly, because this is completely different than what it did yesterday.
Exactly.
Just yesterday, somebody asked me, actually, it was on the user group, I think, the user group chat. Somebody asked me about a demo environment, how do I go about? And I said, unless you're doing something like really complex with HADR and stuff like that, if you just need plain old SQL Server, install it on your laptop and be safe. That's not going to
go out to the portal and create a SQL Server that has all of the adventure works and I forget the warehouse one. But I mean, you can just create a database that has all that stuff. Just boom, it's done.
Right.
And you could just use it to play around and test with.
Exactly.
So are you going to be data grilling this year?
Yes, finally.
Me too. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. I was actually going to be at Data Grillin before the COVID hit on the newcomer track. That's when I was going to start speaking. But then COVID hit, and then I had to take a different kind of path, and I started in the new Stars of Data, actually, the first time it ran.
Right. And me too. I wasn't really new, but I had been out of touch with speaking for so long that I requested Ben to be considered a new star, which he readily obliged.
And that is such a great concept and platform to get started. It was wonderful to have a mentor and be able to kind of know that there's not as much stress there as it would have been like going to a full-on conference and speaking for the first time.
Yes.
So it's a really wonderful platform to get started. So if anyone is thinking, I don't know if there has been a new one announced, but hopefully there will be some coming again at some point. So
I hope so, because that is a good program.
And
exactly.
I really like the COVID protocol they have at Data Grillen. It's like, I think they're doing it absolutely right. Like the conferences that happened last year had a lot of sick people come out of them. So
exactly.
It's important. It's really important in today's world that's in place.
Exactly.
Real respect for Ben and William for doing that, despite the fact that it's fairly unpopular. At least it's unpopular in the States.
But I don't care. Me and my husband, we're going to go to Amsterdam, and we're going to go down to The Hague, and then we're going to go
good
to
for
the
you.
conference. And
right.
we're super excited.
Right.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and it's kind of
what are you going to be speaking on at Data Grillen?
At Data Grillen, I'm going to be speaking about using Terraform to deploy Azure data platform services. So infrastructure as code things and DevOpsy things.
I went to Code Mash, which is a big conference in the Midwest United States. And I had submitted a Data Factory presentation and a couple of others. I ended up doing one that talked about the differences of third normal form modeling, relational modeling versus dimensional snowflake star schema. And so, because it's to a developer conference, right? And most developers are like, oh, I'm gonna build a table and put it all in one big table because that's easier for my application, right? And so to get developers to have some concept of how a database should be designed, right? It goes a long way towards helping them design better ones going forward, especially if it's, just, one person doing everything, database, application, UI, the whole 9 yards. So, but it was so much fun to go and get outside of the data community and meet developers and just expand who you talk to and and being able. And so, but I went to a Terraform session and I learned so much because
I struggle with that because I'm kind of an introvert by nature. So if I go into a conference where I don't know anybody, I would feel kind of lost. I mean, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have any problem sitting in classrooms and learning. That would be a non-issue. The socializing would be a problem.
Peter Shore was there. So Peter
good.
So he was my guy. So And so now because of that, I submitted to another conference in Kansas City, KCDC. And so I'm going to go speak there in August. So I'm super excited. Fun. I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm so glad I think the in-person conferences are coming back. I don't like the virtual. You just don't get the same.
No, you don't.
Jazz.
You don't. It's just most virtual conferences are webinars.
Yeah.
And especially I'm not a fan of the blended approach very much, although I've gained from it, but still, so it's not right to say that entirely. But if you're in a blended conference, for the most part, you're watching a webinar. Nobody cares about saying hello or anything of that nature. The focus is on in person because that's what the conference is supposed to be. Yeah. So I tell people, go buy the recordings if you can. If you're just an attendee, then go buy the recording because it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I started with the online side, so I don't think I have so much, craving for the in-person in a way. And also, it makes it easier. I don't have to travel. I like traveling, but there are limits to how much one person can travel.
It makes it easier is a big point because a lot of companies don't have travel budgets anymore.
Exactly.
I want to go to the Seattle Pass Summit, so I worked out the math and the numbers, and it was like, nope, this is not going to work out because my company no longer pays for anyone to travel and attend anything. And if I have to do it I've done it plenty of times out of pocket. I used to attend it for 22 years since Pass disappeared 2 years ago. But now with inflation being so high and all the other risks involved, that much of money is I'm not going to be able to pull that off on my own. So it's
and
definitely,
I think that's good to acknowledge that it wouldn't be possible for a lot of people to attend the in-person conferences. So
no, not in
there's definitely value to the online ones as well. And I now did my first in-person event at SQL Bits. And I was just kind of thinking about it. It's really nice to see people. And for me, it's a lot about like, I've met these people online and now I'm meeting them for the first time in person.
Yes.
And it's a
Very
little like,
different, yeah.
Name, face, how do this fit together? And things like that. But it also got me thinking because like, it's easy to come in as a speaker where you know a lot of people. But if you come as a person who's coming to attend, you might not know anyone at the event either. So it might be quite a different kind of experience for people who come in, don't know anyone. It might not be so easy to come speak to random people.
No.
Yeah.
And that's why I think at the in-person events, having those newcomer sessions or first time attendees, so that those people that are here for the first time can come and meet other people and get a buddy to connect with, and just feel like they're included and not, they're not just there by themselves.
Yeah. And it's so important to take that into consideration as well. I think being a speaker, it's kind of hard to, or sometimes easy to forget because you have other speakers around you that you at least are able to connect with. So
my first summit was in 2017, and there's two memorable sessions. I went to a Women in Tech panel discussion that had Ree and Monica and who else was on it? I can picture her. She's the head of the Dallas SQL user group. Mindy Kernick.
Mindy Kernick, yeah. Mindy's awesome, yeah.
Just all of these, and I was like, wow, they're like the coolest. I wish I could be that cool. And now I'm like friends with all of I could like go on Twitter and go, hey Ree, how's it going? Right. And I just look back and go, the changes in my life because I went to that summit are just, they're indescribable. My whole life changed going to that. The other session was, so you want to be the next great speaker.
Awesome.
I know. And so I went to that session. I went back in, I think it was the 2019. I went back, the guy that gave that session was there, and I was like, hey, Eddie, I just wanted to tell you, you changed my life. And he like teared up. He was so
my first past session was, I think it was Summit 2004 or 5. I don't recall. 4 or 5, maybe 5. But it was Kathy Kellenberger, who was the former WIT lead. It was her class, and she was teaching a class on how you can write articles and write books. And she even sang a song in the class, and I was,
she's a huge karaoke fan.
I was like, how cool is this? Like, it is so cool, this community. And it took me a number of years after that to actually make myself, I became a chapter lead, and then I started attending more summits. And the fact that PASS allowed leads to attend the summit for free, to me, I owe so much to that. 20 years of the summit for free, which was easily like, $2,500 right there. So I couldn't have done it. I was just, when I started, I was just a junior DBA, making, really less money back then. That much would have been unthinkable out of my pocket. So PASS made that happen. And 20 years after that, they're all my friends, like Leslie said. But back then, there was this so much awe and wow, wowing every person you met.
Exactly.
Right. And now, people that all over the world, right? I can't wait to come to the Netherlands and go see Casper and have dinner and, just hang out and talk cool stuff with cool people.
Right.
Yeah.
So anything else?
So valuable.
Yes. And you're one of those cool people. We're so excited you came and talked to us.
Right. Thank you for talking to us.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been wonderful.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
What is your social media presence? I know you're on Twitter. Where can people find you? They need to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I am on Twitter, and I'm always open for reaching out to me, and I love if I can help somebody find their direction or help them get started or anything like that. So I can be found with my name both on Twitter and LinkedIn.
So do you
have a blog?
I don't have a blog.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Just the podcast. Okay.
Just the podcast. At least for now. There's many things to do.
There are.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. We were super
welcome.
happy to talk with you and glad you could fill in for us and we could get done before the end of April. So we have an April session. So excited.
Excellent. Yeah,
All
very
right.
good. Yeah, it was so wonderful to join you, and it's fun because both of you I've also seen online on many things, and now I get to at least see your face online for the first time. So that's really good.
I can't wait to have dinner with you at Data Grilling.
Yeah,
it'll be so
exactly.
much fun. Yes,
that is so wonderful. Not long.
Not long. I know. Less like 30 days. I'll be leaving.
Exactly.
So.
Thank you, Heini.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.